Good deal. Well, I guess it's Brock Cassidy and Rick Brock with Real Friday starting at again. Really the first Friday of May of 2024. But gosh, I feel like we're already like rolling into summer. This is incredible, even though we're teetering from spring to summer. But this is it's incredible. Like where did January 1st even go? Like it just spring like winter blew like winter and the new year just blew right by, and like that we're already in the middle of the second quarter and we're just rolling.
All I know is my allergies in New York right now are going insane because it went from winter to 80 degrees in about a week.
Oh, it's incredible. The but no, like I think part of what we do, and I know that we're waiting for Jeremy, and Jeremy will be joining us here shortly.
He's late because he's got a very important barbershop appointment right now.
Dude, his hair that must be like going to just a high end, almost like a high end chef is for like a high end pastry. You know what I mean? Someone who's just a genuine expert. And
he said you can get fitted. He said you can get fitted for a custom tailored suit and same while you're waiting.
So. He must be going to a salon.
Yeah.
He doesn't go to a barber like you and I do. I know you go to a barber. You grew up in Maine.
I go to a barber.
Grew up in Maine, go to barbers, but he doesn't. He's part of the.
No,
the Detroit.
He's got some hipster, nouveau chic thing going.
So the aftermath of Housing Wire is here. It seems like it's interesting, the chatter about the conference. That occurred at the gathering here just about 10 days ago or so. I actually thought the chatter would die down faster than it did. I'm still seeing posts about it on LinkedIn. Why do you think that's so? Is it just the relationships that were connected and reunited that was there, the content, or?
I was going to say, as recently as the last couple of days, I'm still getting like tagged in posts and mentioned. And I'm sure you are even more with all the people that you were meeting with and hanging out with there. Yeah, I mean, to me, I think I said this last week. I know we had a full house with 3 or 4 guests, but I think I said last week it's probably the best conference I've been to, just overall. And for me, selfishly, it's like a bunch of our strategic partners were there, like other vendors, real estate and mortgage all in one place was amazing for me to basically save me going to 2 other conferences. So maybe it's just on the right intersection of great mortgage people, great real estate people, great tech and vendor people, all under one roof. But I don't know. What do you think?
No, I'd say kind of similar. I think what made it especially unique is just the market timing. I think between the issues around the settlement with the NAR and in the way that Housing Wire, I think, masterfully integrated, subject matter, pertaining to real estate and then having the C-level. I mean, we had C-level real estate brokerage firm owner operators in some of the top real estate producers in the country, along with the top mortgage originators in the country. I think it was just the right recipe. It was like the right time, the right people, the right recipe, the right subject matters that were being, discussed.
Yeah.
And it all just sort of came together and one. It's going to be a really, really tough. I've already registered for the one in Colorado Springs. It's going to be in the summer of 2025. I did that just as a way of supporting what they're doing. It was $1,000 or whatever it was, and I strongly encourage everyone to kind of register for it because I think it's going to be another good conference, but I think it's going to be a really tough one to beat.
Yeah. I just got to get better at pickleball before the next one. Lost pretty quickly this time around. It was awesome. It was a good location. I'll be interested to see Colorado Springs. That be some cool opportunities in the mountains. But I'll definitely be going back, and I imagine I'll bring more folks from my team. Probably several.
Any like new deals that you guys are working on at NewZip? Like how is that coming along? You guys seem like you've really picked up a lot of traction.
Yeah,
Over the last 6 or 8 months, or at least a number of deals have really come together, and you've come to market with them. How's that?
it's going great. It's we have, I joined about a year ago and was the first kind of full sales hire, as well as kind of just a general executive role. And now I'm starting to grow our team. Recently brought someone on to be an account manager, and hope to continue to bring on some more consultants and full-time kind of account management type hires. So from like a team building standpoint, we're off and running. But yeah, from a market standpoint, we're doing great, which I think is really rare to be able to say in this market. We're coming up on having 30 lender partners. I think we have, depending on how you count the different stages of onboarding, probably around like 27, 28 lenders. We had like 5 last year. We had like 12 months ago, we had about 5. So it's the traction's picking up quickly. It was fun being at Housing Wire to both chat with some of the C-level people at some of the largest lenders. Even some of the banks were there. Chase had their EVP of agent strategy there, for example, and things like that you don't usually see at your average mortgage conference. But it's also nice just from a position of being recognized more and having momentum. We've won a couple. We won like the Lending Tree Innovation Award, and we're in the Housing Wire Tech 100, and some of those things that are starting to differentiate us a little bit and have a more momentum to our story than just being another real estate company partnering with mortgage. So I give a ton of credit to our team and our CEO Audie, who's been steering the ship long before I joined. And he was the head of innovation at Keller Williams and has built some awesome stuff in his career. So I feel like our product's far and away better than anyone we show it to would ever expect. And so it's the selling's pretty easy, but you still have to be out there in the industry. So the Housing Wire conference was perfect.
Now, did Audie, is this primarily self-funded, or did Audie take outside funding or VC funding, or did he get the institutional investment sort of capital behind him?
Yeah,
you guys have done a really good job. It seems like you guys have taken a fair amount of outside capital, because it seems like you guys have done a good job in sort of methodically attending the right conferences and kind of whittling away at opportunities in the marketplace,
Yeah, I appreciate that. We've been pretty lean, honestly. Like I said, a year ago, I was kind of the first sales hire, and kind of completing the executive team, at least for this iteration. So yeah, we have a fully formed board with a couple of VCs, but we've gotten a lot of backing we've gotten a chunk of our backing from a family office that owns a few different real estate businesses. They own, some homeowners insurance businesses. They own some appraisal businesses, things like that, kind of old school real estate businesses, and that we're kind of like their tech play. So that's been really fun, and our board members from that group are pretty hands on. So we haven't done a lot of traditional VC, just a little bit, but we're actually with kind of the momentum of the past year and growing our business so much, we're actually going to start raising right about now a round of funding from probably mostly venture capital, but maybe a mix of some strategics in the industry as well.
I think that's great. No, I think it's well deserved, and I think that especially, I know you guys issued a white paper, and I think you're working on another white paper, right? With another lender.
Yeah. We published a white paper with the consumer direct lender on Housing Wire last October, and that was that went really well. That's kind of, I guess, the beginning of our partnership with Housing Wire a little bit on some of this content. And yeah, that went really well. It had both a case study and then just kind of some of our general thoughts about how lenders can take back some more control of the process and be more hands-on in the real estate process rather than kind of the opposite historically. And yeah, we're working on a couple different possible case studies right now, both in reference to some competitors and lenders that have switched to us from some of our more direct competitors, as well as we're doing with our launch with NewRez. We've done some press with them already and hope to continue to speak in the industry with them about kind of how we're engaging servicers and serviced clients with more offers and more ways to basically help retention. So
That's
yeah,
great.
keep them busy.
What's your head count now from a staff standpoint?
It depends how you count it, because we've got some fractional people, and lots of advisors and things like that, but around 20. Yeah.
No, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have done a great job, and I think certainly, I've had good interactions. I think as I get rolling at Sierra Pacific, I mean, obviously, I'd love to figure out exactly like the best use case. I think part of when so much focus right now with what I'm doing is really just on gaining like sort of fairly quick traction, sort of out of the gate. And if that's something that I think you guys can help with, then we should really collaborate around that so we can figure out the best way of doing that. We have 100 or so LOs around the country, and they all purchase driven, self-sourced, loan officers that are in the trenches, kind of doing their thing. And our hope is to hire another 100 or so over the course of the next year.
The kind of boots on the ground retail loan officers were not kind of our original adopters. We were kind of going to the direct to consumer, online lenders, things like that. We've started to find some really good use cases for the types of guys that you're describing, and have had some kind of early success stories the last few months of helping groups like that generate new types of business, new types of offers, things like that. So I'd be interested to hear what you think when we get there.
Yeah. What else are you hearing by way of just other tech innovations and other plays out there? I know, Title Genius is coming up more and more. Title obviously is an area that you and Jeremy have spent a great deal of time in.
Jeremy more than me.
Well, Jeremy especially, yeah, especially his stint at Stavi.
Yeah.
But what would you? It's kind of interesting because I'm finding it to be part of the kind of the trench warfare between the tech vendors right now, because it seems to be kind of a quiet battle right now, because it's it's hard to get the attention of lenders right now because everyone's kind of ramping up to what with what the spring and the summer are going to bring, and there's really not a lot of focus on what else and what's next. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree. And I mean, it's not like it's been easy for us either. It's like we're having to create really fast ROI and kind of easy onboarding processes to sign these lenders. Certainly. I think for heavier tech vendors, it's just been really painful for adoption. These projects that might take months, I think just through the grapevine, not like I have a ton of these conversations myself, but it seems like with all the consolidation and, different lenders selling off different portions of their business or their whole business. I mean, some even shutting down full divisions, some probably considering shutting down their whole operation, as we talked about last week. Like, I think it's just an incredibly hard time to enter a long sales cycle. If it's going to be selling a new LOS or selling a new, some really deeply embedded piece of tech or suite of tech, I think it's just a really hard time out there. The good news is, I think a lot of those companies are pretty well backed because during the boom of the last couple of years, they got a lot of funding. So I think it's like for the vendors that are staying above water and continuing to be present in the industry and build relationships, they will win. Kind of similar to the lending narrative. Like if you can stay alive, you'll probably end up winning on the other side. I'd be interested in what you think. I mean, no lender's trying to add more costs or switching costs right now. So it's.
Well, I mean, Jay, the president of Sierra Pacific, he obviously this is a comment that's been reiterated time and time again. I think most recently, but vendors that simply are not who don't have a clear use case of adding production, either lowering costs or generating revenue or driving production, are going to take a pretty hard back seat. And it's just kind of the fact. It's just kind of the fact of the matter and the state of the industry on where it resides today. So I think if you're not driving revenue, if you're not reducing costs, and if you're not increasing production volume, I think it's going to be a really, really tough, a tough use case for adoption purposes, you know?
And you're asking about title specifically, and I do not consider myself a title expert. Well, if Potter eventually gets done his haircut and can make it on, then we'll have to ask him. But I will give a shout out to whether it's at the Housing Wire event or even just out in the industry in general. I love continuing to see such a big presence from title companies and so much creativity on how they're winning business. I've seen some new to me, I don't know about new to me models of title companies helping lenders launch new channels of business by co-sponsoring marketing. I've seen some, easier ways to do joint ventures or create, basically creating like the title in a box sort of thing for smaller lenders or for companies like ours. Not that we've done it yet. I don't know if we will do it or not. But I applaud kind of the creativity of the title industry specifically, and a lot of the industries. I've seen similar stuff in home insurance, where they know that no one wants to do anything complicated and expensive right now, but they're trying to make it really easy to go to market and ancillary offers, make some money on title, make some money on homeowners insurance. And I know you've played in all those pools doing national partnerships with like New American Funding and Cross Country and other companies. So I don't know if you see it being any different than in the past, or maybe I'm just getting.
It's hard because unless there isn't more of an immediate, we're in kind of an immediate gratification kind of period, right?
Exactly.
And that's what's challenging to some degree with these larger national partnership programs, is that it takes a long time for these programs to really sort of take root and actually generate revenue. When it starts generating revenue, it really contributes and it helps underwrite some underlying costs. But beyond that, it's really difficult, And so that's why like homeowners insurance is another one that, obviously not just homeowners insurance, but home warranty kind of programs.
Yeah.
I'd love to roll out a program like that at Sierra Pacific. I think we could probably generate a couple $100,000 a year in business through kind of a modest adoption curve.
Right.
That is one of the things I'd like to do, but especially when you start a new role like I have, there's a lot of different directions I can run. There's a lot of different directions within the enterprise I could go, whether it's acquiring companies or I'm talking to a lot of groups potentially, but then trying to determine like their fit within the organization, and then kind of negotiate product and price with them as well.
From like the fresh eyes on Sierra Pacific, obviously I'm sure you've been talking to them for a while, but fresh eyes in terms of just starting there. Do you guys own any of those pieces already? Do you own your own title company or heavy partnership with a title company, or like what does that look like for
No, so probably the best thing the company did was it built its own LOS after it came off a point back in 08, 09, kind of played around with Encompass. And then finally it's a very tech forward company. So the company invested really heavily in building an LOS, which I actually thought was a huge negative at first. But then when I really got my arms on the LOS and I started sort of poking through it, I realized just how strong the platform really is and how intuitive and how slick it is. And there's nothing better than the price tag, because our cost of operations of actually originating the loan from an underlying technology standpoint is effectively free. I mean, other than just the maintenance and support of it, which requires a small team to do so. But they've really got it. They make where most companies have failed in this regard. They're one in 100 that I've seen where it actually works, and it works well, and it works really, really well.
That's one that would not jump to mind as something to build yourself either. But if you do it right, then I'm sure it works. So that's good to hear.
So that's the one thing they've done a really good job at. As far like one pivotal thing. There's a lot of things I think the company does really well, but I think the one thing that really stands out is the millions of dollars it saves on an annualized basis as a result of just building an LOS, but having built it right, and one that the LO is really. And look, I'm a Calyx and Compass guy. I've worked in those platforms for 15 years or 18 years, and so I was inherently critical of any company looking to build out their own LOS, and I'm totally blown away with how effective they have, both in the build out and in the adoption, and then the raving fans that the loan officers have, over it. Beyond that, as far as title appraisal, we don't own our own AMC. Some companies do. We don't own our own title company. Some companies do.
Right.
So I do see maybe some opportunities there for some joint venture or something to that effect. It may not be a bad idea, but again, it's a question of where you want to put your energy. I mean, that's when you there's so many different. Holy cow! So time out, Jeremy. Is this pre or post haircut? Is this
post, right?
Is this after your haircut's done? Is this after?
Yeah, if it was before, I would have been on the call on time at 12:35.
I think your nickname is Kramer. Like you're. I mean,
let's do the sides. Can we do a? Wow. That's a Detroit.
Dude, you got a mohawk. Like kind of, it's a little bit of it's a stylish mohawk. It's not quite a full mohawk, but it's kind of a salon mohawk.
This week on Mortgage Branding, let's talk haircuts.
Dude, look, you showing up late is what's created this distraction. So we had to at least create some attention.
We have to address it. We can't. Yeah, I get it.
The millions of viewers had already been guessing what it was going to look like.
You know what happened, Rick?
Oh, what's that?
I really wanted to do it from the chair, and I only figured it out after the facts, like when you have a good idea, but it's too late. I found the spot where I could have put the phone and just done the whole show from the chair, and Justin would have been cool with it, but I figured it out too late. So next time we'll do like a little, LeBron's The Shop on HBO. It's essentially what we're trying to do here.
Sure.
I'm jealous with the amount of hair, so I think it looks pretty tight. I think it looks awesome. I think it looks really good, man.
It does.
If there's gonna be like a male version of Sex in the City, it could be you in Detroit.
I'll pitch that and see.
Yeah. Netflix content. Yeah.
I was just talking about Sierra and some of the things that I've observed so far at Sierra. We talked a bit about NewsZip and some of the. Have you been watching thus far, or no? You haven't been able to.
Listen, it gets recorded and it goes on LinkedIn and YouTube, so I will definitely go back and be
Facebook.
Watching it immediately after this. I cannot endorse Facebook. Whatever happens on Facebook, I have no idea. It's been 3 years. I'm never going back. But LinkedIn and YouTube, I'm all in. And by the way, this is not a judgment of Meta. I'm on Instagram every single day, 10 times a day. So just to be clear, this is specifically to the bullshit on Facebook that I cannot handle anymore, people. But I'm on Instagram and I will watch the first, 21 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll watch it back on LinkedIn and YouTube and I'll make my comments.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's enjoying this content right now. Sorry to be a disruption. I just think it's like part of the vibe here on the show that we strive for.
No, but I think that the Mike Kush just gave us a thumbs down to this
content. Mike's like, listen.
This sums it up from our fans. Our
Mike is such
they want to hear about LOS innovation. They don't want to hear about
Mike's an attentive. Yeah, exactly. Mike's dialed in. If you see Mike's comments and not only just watching us, which I appreciate, Mike, but also like your comments are dialed in. So we get it. We'll shift back to what matters here, mortgage technology to the degree. there is such a thing.
So we were talking about how Sierra Pacific built their own LOS, and Rick was hesitant to think that was a good idea, and now he's a believer that it's a differentiator. And
well, I mean, I was a believer of it prior to joining them, because I wouldn't have joined them if I thought that was a major sort of obstacle. But I've consulted with so many mortgage companies that had looked to Sex in the City with Jeremy Potter. No, a hard no. Got it. No, I'm in agreement with that, Mike.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike.
But I've consulted with mortgage companies where there was Blueberry Systems, and there was a number of other mortgage companies where they had toolkits, and they tried to sort of customize it and roll it out. And even CoreLogic had a system that we used at Lend US for about 6 months before we had to dump it, because that was just another toolkit that we customized and deployed. There's been it's a technology graveyard of lenders trying to build out their own LOSs, and invariably, as the cycles shift, they end up scrapping it and then moving on. But go ahead, Jerry, you're about to say something.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the things I've always struggled with is like, what are you solving for? Are you solving for user experience of your team members? Are you solving for source of truth, system of record on loan delivery? Are you solving for something that has to integrate well across, everything you're doing? And one of the things that you're bringing up is that there's actually more pieces than ever before, like how the data comes in, how many services you call, how many vendors you call, where the data has to go, the kind of work that has to go in under the hood. So do
you think that's true though? Do you think that's grown in the last 10 years? I mean, I think it's the same services. It's not like,
don't you think when you got a stack of documents and scanned them in, or got a stack of documents and entered them in and retained copies of them, that alone is now like a dozen different vendors for income, assets, different things like that. So yeah, credit you still called, appraisal you still ordered out and got back, title you still ordered out and got back. There was certainly a number of vendors, but I'm suggesting that like just on the credit underwriting side, you now call a handful or more, a dozen or so different services that were just paper 20 years ago.
It's interesting because I think if lenders had the thought leadership where it began with the question of what problem are we truly trying to solve,
right,
then I think the success would have been much higher. I think the problem is they always go into it thinking that it's going to be, oh, this is easy. It's a bunch of forms. So they're not really solving any key problems. They're just trying to cut costs, and they're trying to sort of string together a bunch of forms, and then they oversimplify perhaps the integrations that are needed. And then invariably they don't really go into it with any, and they have a lot of cash to burn. So they, at that particular point in time when they pull the trigger on that, and I think, obviously Caliber had their own LOS. So there's been a few exceptions to that rule where I think Cherry Creek built their own LOS, or at least one that was kind of layered in and around.
That's how I met Dom Marchetti. I shout out to Dom. He's one of probably the leading voices and thought leaders in this area of the business. And he's seen it all. He's done it all. I think what you're saying, because I'm working on this problem right now, I'm thinking about it right now for a white paper. And the idea that you look to the LOS to tell you what your procedure should be, you look to the LOS to tell you what your process should be, I think is a fundamental flaw. I think what you're saying, Rick, is when it works is when you say, this is my culture. My culture translates into my process. I need technology that does the process I've decided on. And I think a lot of, especially Encompass users, when you are asked for what your operating procedures look like, you give them the Encompass workflow. And you're like, well, I just reverse engineered a procedure from whatever the LOS does. And what the strongest vision is, like, my company is blank centric, task centric, underwriting centric, sales centric, like whatever you've decided your process and differentiator is, and then you build technology, you find technology that supports the decisions you've made culturally.
Yeah,
That's
I
got
think
to be it.
yeah, no, I agree with that. But I think that this kind of gets to yeah, Mike agrees with that 100%. I think
Yeah.
I think whenever you have the SOPs written around the way in which if you're hamstrung by a particular vendor versus you having a vision for how you'd actually leverage that vendor to put it to good use, then I think it's the question of is the tail wagging the dog or sort of vice versa? Because I do think you end up being hamstrung with the limitations of Encompass, and I think you get lazy. I don't think you really think about how do you you don't ask yourself the question around what efficiencies you can introduce into the platform. It's more like what will your technology allow, and if that's your starting point, then I think it's just really narrow.
I got I can't remember, I might have already told you this, Jeremy, but I had sort of a funny question the other day. We're onboarding a new lender, showing them our tech, giving them access to our platform, all that good stuff. And one of the executives asked, do I need to, how many people do I need to hire to maintain our version of your platform? Like, and list a couple examples of like, oh, for our LOS, we have 2 or 3 people. For our CRM, we have 2 people. I was like, no. Like,
that's not how it works. Yeah.
We built it. But it was I just hadn't thought of it that way. Of course, a big enough lender is going to have to employ multiple people that are experts on any of their systems, but it was not a question I'd ever gotten before. So I thought it was funny. People are beat up by having to put so much work into adjusting these workflows, I guess.
Well, think about it. Like Salesforce comes to mind, Encompass comes to mind. That's like an actual job description, a certified Salesforce administrator, a certified Encompass administrator.
Right.
I think it means you've won, SaaS when that happens. But I think it also ends up being like you kind of become too big for your own efficiencies at that point. And it's like you won, but also like how do you keep growing and staying nimble when you're that big that you need actual administrators just to make your product work for everybody? That's a really tough challenge for sure. I don't have an answer for it other than that, but the fact that there are so many licensed Encompass administrators, it's like, yeah, it's that much of a piece of your business that you need dedicated 2-3 people each to implement.
Well, look, sometimes for most mortgage companies out there, having that kind of outsourced,
yeah, you can find
services available makes it a lot easier to
outsource. Like you mean like Matchbox, Terra Verde, yeah.
Or just having a consultant hired Encompass admin.
Yeah.
I mean,
most
mortgage companies are pretty small, and that number is becoming fewer. So I just think it's. Mike asked, does your offering integrate with an LOS, Brock?
Yeah. And by the way, that was not, I was laughing because it's not like LOSs do so much more than our platform. So it's like, it's not an apples to apples comparison, but it was a funny question. Yes, though we do integrate, we've integrated with Encompass a few times. We've integrated with dozens of CRMs. I'd say we more often integrate with the CRM and kind of the communication management stack of a lender because we're really just governing the real estate part of the transaction. But we do integrate with some LOSs and are happy to do more. It kind of like depends on the tech stack of the lender. Some of them don't need us on the LOS; they just need us in one of their other systems.
Yeah, as things start picking up during the summer months, Jeremy, what are you advising lenders right now? In how are you helping them, or even tech vendors for that matter, kind of position their offerings through the summer or rolling into the fall? Like, are you just sending their sites into the 24, 25 year? I mean, how are you helping them kind of stage and get adoption or to implement new technologies?
The key question last week was that we talked about is the threshold question. Are you focused on cost cutting in the manufacturing process? Are you investing in top of funnel growth? That's the key question. Then the next question down for the summer would be when you start to look at either you've created up funnel growth and now you have to hand it off to your operations, or you focused on this efficiency. How do you take advantage of it to your sales force when this happens? There's really two key questions. One, how do you trigger more tasks using data only upfront? So an indication comes in, let's say it's a signed purchase agreement. You've done the pre-approval, you got a signed purchase agreement. What happens in your system when that signed purchase agreement comes in? Does a person have to go into a portal, pull that PDF down, review it, and trigger a bunch of tasks? Or is your system seeing and certifying, I have enough data from what was uploaded by the consumer or what was uploaded by my loan officer to start firing tasks off? So like one of the things I've been talking a lot about is how you pull tasks up earlier in the process and use data verification to fire a title order, to fire an appraisal order, to fire other types of services that are needed off of data only. If a purchase contract comes in at 11 o'clock in the morning, do you already have services in motion by 9 a.m.? Or do you have to wait till 9 a.m., somebody comes in, sees the purchase contract in the portal, brings it in and starts doing stuff? Second, so that's one area. The second area then is how do you assign work? Are you delegating more to technology, and how are you doing that? How are you taking your existing lists, checklists, things that people need to do in your organization, and how are you finding the areas that can be delegated to technology? That may or may not be AI. A lot of what I'm telling people is, if you want a reason to talk about AI, if you want a reason to have AI in your business, we can find one. If all that you're trying to solve for is marketing and communications. Hey, we just want to be able to say we have it deployed somewhere because we need to be able to say that for recruiting or for whatever. Great, we'll find a spot for it. But if you're looking for ways to actually put AI into your manufacturing process so that humans are delegating the work to technology and technology is doing the work on behalf of your person, then how you assign those tasks, how you assign people's checklists, workflows, queues becomes critically important. And you can't necessarily just do it off of the same old queues you've been working off of. Maybe you can, but a lot of times you have to review that. So I would say those are the two big areas. How do you trigger tasks earlier, and how do you give people better queues, better workflows to be successful?
And so that kind of planning and mapping out, you're suggesting to do that now, so that way you can implement when?
So that you can be, so as you're planning for what does the next 12 months look like, what does the next 18 months look like, I think you could be pretty comfortable from last week or 2 weeks ago being like, okay, I'm not going to count on rates. I'm going to start making decisions that I could have made 6 months ago, but if I didn't, start making them now. So this was my advice in December, but since it's April, May, I guess it's May now, yeah, it's like, let's start doing it now. I'm not talking about things that take a year. I'm talking about things you can have done in 3 or 4 months because you're doing them in a way that supports your growth over the next year or two.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It does. We should probably we got to have an AI. I think having more tech. I think one of our more successful people that we interviewed was the founder of Truve, outside of Brock's boss. Was the founder of Truve. I thought that was a really insightful episode that we had, and it may not be a bad idea to have another one, representing maybe either AI innovations or someone that actually helps consolidate those tasks or workflows or priorities for an organization to kind of streamline some of those efficiencies. I know we have a use case at Sierra that the organization's pretty proud of, where it basically took all regs and just essentially replaced all regs with an AI driven, like just type in your particular scenario and it kicks out which particular product and program is going to be best for the LO. And those are pretty low hanging fruit kind of opportunities, but they're ones of,
yeah, that's kind of what Varun demoed in air quotes at Housing Wire, was like a Q&A natural language type of thing for team members, customers, or brokers, agents, or LOs. And I've seen a bunch of them since. When I posted that on LinkedIn, a bunch of people reached out and I've seen different versions. And so it does seem like if you want some chat AI capabilities in your business, that's the best way to get them the quickest. Give your people a tool, type in the question, get the answer, and go. You can claim AI, and
yeah,
not
it's a good
bad.
way to it's a good way to sort of test drive it too, right? They give it to the
Yeah,
staff, give it
yeah,
to the experts first, and if they're telling you anything's wrong with it, then go back to the lab before you give it to the consumers.
yeah. And the point of need, I mean, I really like this idea of the point of need as a concept. How do you get data to the point of need? How do you get payments to the point of need? How do you get credit to the point of need? How do you get information to the point of need? So information is the easiest. Like the right information to the right person in your organization at the right time. How do you hand them that toolkit? But to me, that's a theme that should pervade all of what you're doing. It should be what our industry is talking about. Like payments, to me, payments is a really good example. We all are used to checking out online and seeing about 7 different options. You can pay with Apple Pay, you can pay with a credit card, you can pay with Venmo, PayPal, including
Buy now,
buy
pay
now,
later
pay.
with the firm. Yeah.
So you've got 7 or 8 options. Why? They put it right at the point of need. I'm buying something. Here's my menu of options. Here's my toolkit. Same thing with credit. How do we get credit to sit at the point of need? Well, we have to pre-verify data. We have to keep data live. We have to keep data accurate. So your pre-approval is a real pre-approval. And then you have to put it right where the need is, where I'm shopping for a home, where I'm shopping for home improvement, where I'm shopping for credit. And so I think credit at the point of need, information at the point of need. If I was a CEO crafting like a theme that could fit everywhere in my business, from a chat bot all the way through to our strategic plan for the next 5 years, it would be point of need. How do we meet our customers at the point of need? How do we meet our team members at the point of need? How do we meet mortgage brokers at the point of need?
So Todd Hensley said our industry seems crippled by the lack of performant cloud-based API architecture needed to move data to the point of need. I mean, I think that's fair, right? So the interoperability and the exchange of information is part of the challenge, right? That's a really good point. Michael Kelleher. Problems when you cannot reduce a role by at least 65%. The lending industry really gets no savings except at a time that study manage. I don't know if that's a headcount. That's a technology, as opposed to being technology as a point of need. That's a technology as a function of just reducing headcount and maybe reducing additional touches on a certain task.
Well, I think especially because it can be very difficult when you take pressure off of a technology, the opportunity to do even 65% or 50%, let's say, to Mike's point. What else are you unlocking? And if the answer is nothing else, if you're doing it literally just to do more primary origination mortgages, then correct. It really is a high bar, because I think what a lot of people at mid-sized to smaller IMBs would say to me, hey, I love your tools speeding up whatever task, but my people are fine right now. Like, I don't need to get any faster because I don't have anything to give them. I'm not adding another channel. I'm not adding another product. I'm not moving them to servicing. I'm not moving them to other friction points. If you are running an organization that has the ability to put people in different roles within the organization, then you can alleviate the burden for less than 65% potentially, but that's because you're going to have that person adding HELOCs into the workflow, or adding, other types of things from a retention perspective, or maybe even a servicing perspective. I know that's a high bar to ask, but one of the things I witnessed at Rocket was team members moving to where the need was. If we automated something at Rocket, we would move team members onto something else. Find the next friction point.
Like whack-a-mole. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think
expose the next bottleneck, and then the next bottleneck, which actually is a totally fine way to do innovation.
Yeah.
It just takes a while. Yeah.
And you have to be committed to a less than 65% savings, because you're like, okay, I'm going to get here, move here, get here, move here, get here. And in the aggregate, you get a lot faster and you get a lot more dynamic people. So I don't know. That would be my 2 cents on that. Although that didn't feel very articulate, but hope that helped.
So what conferences are you going to? I know we're wrapping up here, but what conferences are you heading to coming up? I'm going to be at Secondary coming up here in a couple weeks in New York. I don't know if you're going to go to that, Brock.
Brock lives there. He'll walk
We'll
over.
be in New
He'll walk
York
over.
because that's where I live. But yeah, I'll be there.
I thought you were in Philly. Are you in Brooklyn again? Are you in New York?
In Manhattan.
Oh, you're in Manhattan. Have you always been there? For some reason, I thought you were in Philly.
Never in Philly, but I was in Detroit, and then I was in New York. I did live in Brooklyn for 1 year. I've been in New York in total for, I think this is my 5th year. So 4 years in Manhattan, 1 year in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn like peak COVID, and everything was much more outdoors and open, so that was nice. Manhattan was all shut down. But no, I've been living in New York since 2019.
Got it. No, so yeah, we'll definitely have to get together. Where are you going to be next in the coming weeks, Jeremy?
I'm moderating a panel on Monday at the MBA's Legal Issues Conference on hot topics and emerging trends in customer experience and cost. So I will be with some MBA folks, the legal compliance side of the world in San Diego. And then I actually may not make Secondary this year. We'll see. Open question. I'll let you guys know if I do. But I am attending NS3, which is the National Settlement Services Summit. So a lot of like the title settlement, title insurance folks. And as you both know, there's a lot going on in title insurance and title insurance technology right now. So I'll be down in Naples in 2 weeks for talk to title folks.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, good. Well, I look forward to another week at Real Fridays. Let's brainstorm a little bit about another guest we could have. It may not be a bad idea to line up and a leading tech vendor on the AI side. I think that might be really interesting.
Great.
But we can. And I wouldn't mind maybe, Jeremy. We should talk a little bit about crib equity too, because I feel like they're gaining a lot of momentum just through some of the work that we've done with them. It may not be a bad idea to.
You don't have to tease me with shared equity or shared appreciation very much, as everybody knows, because I won't stop posting about it. It's one of my favorite topics. So let's talk equity. We can have Sky on. Let's have Sky on. Let's talk.
Yeah,
I do think it's catching some root though. You know what I mean? I do feel like there's some momentum behind it, both on the lender on the demand side, but also on the fulfillment side.
I think I said this to you guys offline, but it was I enjoyed hanging out with Sky and talking to him about crib equity at the Housing Wire event. So that sounds good to me.
All right.
So, well, good. Well, Jeremy. Thank you for coming, and appreciate you showing up. Better late than never. And Brock, always good to see you, man.
Likewise.
Keep it loose. All right, later.
Thank you. All right.
We are.